Hello, my name is Tom and I'm here today to lead you in a quick, fun drama lesson from home based all around a book called On the Origin of Species, or to give it its full, very long title, On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection or the Preservation of Favoured Races in the Struggle for Life. Very complicated title, very long, but the book isn't as complicated as that title might make it sound. The book was written by a very famous scientist called Charles Darwin over 150 years ago. You would think that something from over 150 years ago would be out of date, wouldn't have any relevance to the lives we now live, but everything we understand both about ourselves and the animal kingdom all stem back to this book, in which Charles Darwin grappled with the question of how do we come to be as we are, and why do we change and adapt ourselves and the animal kingdom. Charles Darwin was a man who knew a lot of things. He sailed all around the world making observations, writing diaries, exploring the animal kingdom. He was fascinated by biology, and it was the process of over 20 years of research that led him to write On the Origin of Species, a book in which he laid out his theory at the time, which has now gained more credence and more proof, that the animal kingdom adapts and changes in order to survive. You might have heard this referred to as the survival of the fittest. It's a theory that by changing and growing, by removing things that don't help animals to survive, we become stronger and more likely to exist as a species. That's amongst each and every different type of species, from humans to rabbits to flamingos to birds, which is what a lot of Charles Darwin's research related to. The first aspect of Charles Darwin's theory that we're going to look at and explore is inheritance. Inheritance is something that's really easy and clear for us to see right before us, just thinking about ourselves. We are all inheriting things from our parents, but we are not a copy and paste of them, are we? We take a mix of the things from them and we have them, but we also have our own different things. For example, I have exactly the same nose as my mum. I inherited my nose from my mother. That can be clearly seen if we put a picture of us next to each other. But I inherited my dad's height. My dad's a tall man like me. I'm 6'1", he's 6'2". My mother is short. My mother is 5'4". I could have inherited shortness from my mother, but instead I inherited height from my father. I inherited dark hair and dark eyes, brown eyes, just like my parents. And I want you to now think about the things that you have from one or both of your parents that you know, and how genetically, just in the way that you were born, that affects you. I want you to imagine how your life would be different if you had inherited a different aspect, a different quality from your parents. Say you've got your mum's nose like I do. Imagine what it would be like if you had your dad's nose, if you know what that looks like. Imagine how different your life would be if you had blonde hair rather than dark hair. If you've inherited short genes from your parents, if you're one of the shortest people in your class, how different would it feel and seem to walk through the world if you're one of the taller people in the class, or the opposite way around? Imagine being no longer really tall, imagine being one of the shorter people. These kind of things all influence how we interact with the world and how we carry ourselves through our lives and make a decision about what we are and how we live. I would like you to get up on your feet and physicalize all these different changes that could affect you and what a different kind of person you would be. If you want to imagine yourself, if you're a really fast person, imagine how it would feel to walk slower through the world. I want you to walk around the room. Imagine if you feel like you've got a naturally high voice, imagine making yourself a naturally lower voice. It's also important to bear in mind that these inherited things from your parents, from the people around you, aren't just genetic. We also have things that happen because of how we interact with the world around us. For example, I have a northern accent because my parents are from the north of England. My dad's from Scotland, my mum is from Yorkshire. How would your voice be different if you had different parents? Imagine doing a different voice, a different accent. All these things affect how we interact with the world. Really well done. I hope you saw that by walking around with a completely different set of genetic build-up made walking through the world a completely different experience. And now I want us to think about how genetic mutation affects those in the animal kingdom. A big part of Charles Darwin's research came down to a bird in the Galapagos, which was an island that he visited. He noticed that the birds there all had different kinds of beaks. Some of them had big beaks, some of them had small beaks, some of them had narrow beaks. They all seemed to have these different kind of beaks for different reasons. It all came down to what kind of food those specific birds enjoyed. For example, there was a bird with a long, narrow beak. There was a bird that was particularly fond of cactus flowers and eating them. Its long, narrow beak meant it was able to burrow into the flower and get the nectar at its very source. However, the birds with short, stubby beaks were birds that liked soft nuts and seeds. They would eat away at them, they would be able to nibble on them. All these different kinds of beaks were built so that they could have the best chance of survival by having good access to the food they needed. The big birds with big beaks would have large nuts that they would crush with their strong big beaks. Darwin came to realise that birds who had advantageous beaks, those are beaks that would help them get food, were the birds who were most likely to live for the longest. These birds would thus be able to reproduce, they would have children and carry on their lines, and their beaks would carry on and adapt through the generations. Beaks that weren't advantageous, beaks that might not have helped birds catch food and eat the seeds that they like to eat, would slowly no longer live as long, and they would stop being in existence. They wouldn't be passed on to future generations. And that's how natural selection works. It means the successful adaptations get carried on through family lines, and the unsuccessful mutations stop at the source. I thought we could have a little play around with what it would be like if an animal had different types of mutations and how that might affect them. Hello, I'm now very far away. So, in order to explore this, I thought I've come up with a song. I thought we could sing it, and I want you to figure out which version of the penguin would be the most likely penguin to survive in the wild. Okay, I'm going to sing the song. I want you to start joining in with me, okay? So it goes. Have you ever had a penguin round for tea? Take a look at me, a penguin you will see. Penguins, pay attention, penguins begin. Okay, that's the song. This time I want you to join in with me, okay? We're going to keep going round and round and round, and each time something new is going to be added to the penguin. I want you to know I want you to tell me later on when the best version of the penguin is, and by which point the penguin has gone beyond being a practical, sensible penguin, okay? So, have you ever had a penguin round for tea? Take a look at me, a penguin you will see. Penguins, pay attention, penguins begin. Right arm, have you ever had a penguin round for tea? Take a look at me, a penguin you will see. Penguins, pay attention, penguins begin. Right arm, left arm, have you ever had a penguin round for tea? Take a look at me, a penguin you will see. Penguins, pay attention, penguins begin. Right arm, left arm, right leg. Have you ever had a penguin round for tea? Take a look at me, a penguin you will see. Penguins, pay attention, penguins begin. Right arm, right leg, left leg. Have you ever had a penguin round for tea? Take a look at me, a penguin you will see. Penguins, pay attention, penguins begin. Right arm, right leg, left leg, stick out your bum. Have you ever had a penguin round for tea? Take a look at me, a penguin you will see. Penguins, pay attention, penguins begin. Right arm, right leg, left leg, stick out your bum, stick out your tongue. Have you ever had a penguin round for tea? Take a look at me, a penguin you will see. Penguins, pay attention, penguins begin! Woo! And we're back up close again. Hope you had fun performing that little song. So let's talk through all the different versions of the penguin and whether they would be very practical or not. So first we had the penguin with just one flipper. That penguin couldn't walk, it couldn't run around, It only had one flipper going around. It could only use one flipper to catch things, so it wouldn't be the most practical penguin, would it? The second one had two flippers, which is a bit more practical. It means it could grab things, it means it could give people hugs, but it still doesn't have any functioning legs in order to get around and make things happen. In order to survive, penguins need to catch fish, and they wouldn't be able to do that very easily without its legs. The version of the penguin which could only have one leg but it had both its flippers was very difficult to do. I don't know if you found it difficult to balance, but I did. I was wobbling all over the place. You'd have to hop everywhere to try and get your fish, and that wouldn't be very easy, would it? The most effective version of the penguin, the most likely to be successful in its mission of surviving, I would say, is the penguin that had a right arm, a left arm, a right leg and a left leg. That way it can waddle around, it can catch its fish with its arms and its beak. It's kind of got everything going on. It's all perfectly laid out to have success. After that, the version with its bum sticking out was a bit harder because it had its bum in the way, because it had its backside in the way. It was finding it harder to walk around than it did when it was upright and streamlined. Remember, penguins can't fly. They're flightless birds, but what they are is very, very good swimmers, which is how they catch their fish. That means they've got to be streamlined in order to be the best swimmers that they can be. Having its bum sticking out wouldn't help it survive and catch fish. And then, having the tongue sticking out as well, even though it's got both arms and both legs, it's got its bum in its way and it's got its tongue sticking out, and that would make it harder to communicate, it would make it harder to catch fish. So sometimes you can have a mutation and an adaptation in an animal that actually makes it harder for it to exist. Say that happened, that penguin might not pass on its genes to another line because it would have a shorter lifespan. So, my big task for you all is, I want you to come up with your own song like that penguin song that goes through and finds out which version of an animal's adaptation would be ridiculous and which would be its most practical, and then maybe go beyond the point of it being practical where it becomes things start getting in the way. You could do an octopus, you could do a kangaroo, you could do a rabbit, you can do whatever animal you want. I want you to go through all the different things that make up that animal and see at what point they have the perfect combination of things to be excellent at what they need to do. I'm going to give you a few minutes now to come up with it, and then we're going to watch it all together at the end. Excellent work, guys, really well done. I hope you had fun working through your own song and figuring out how an animal's adaptations incorporate into its everyday life to make it the best version that it can be, so it can pass on those genes to its next generation and have the best chance of survival. It's such an interesting idea that Charles Darwin discovered and researched and spent his life in Bromley. I haven't mentioned, Charles Darwin is from Bromley. He lived in Bromley for many years. You can go visit his house. It's a gorgeous museum. It's really worth paying a visit to. And he did lots of his research and writing On the Origin of Species right here in Bromley. Excellent work. I hope you've had a great time. Share your song around, spread the knowledge and the joy that you've had today, and I hope you have a really good week. Bye!